Today we visited Fedor, Texas, a small community north of Giddings in modern-day Lee County. Fedor is a few miles north of Giddings and about 20 miles north of Serban. In the mid-1850s, a group of Winds, along with their pastor, the Reverend John Killian, settled in Serban, Texas. By the 1860s, the Winds had begun to expand outward from Serban, and some of them had settled in the region of Fedor, which was at that point called West Yehovah. By 1870, many of the group desired to have their own school and church. At that point, the road system was still not very well developed, and the 20-mile trip to Serban for children to go to school or for them to attend services was not always an easy trek. So in 1871, the group met and established Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. The group soon issued a call to a J.A. Proft to be their school teacher. Proft was particularly well suited for this congregation because he himself was Windish. He had been trained as a cabinet maker in the Old World and had decided to become a missionary. He began his theological training there and soon immigrated to the United States, where he completed his education at the so-called Practical Seminary in St. Louis. From there, he took the call to Fedor. However, his training as a cabinet maker did not go to waste. He designed and built the windows at St. Paul Serban and also assisted Holy Cross in Warda by constructing an altar and pulpit. He even drew up the plans for the small building that was to be constructed in Fedor to be used for a school and parsonage. Soon thereafter, Proft was called to be full-time pastor at Fedor as well. By 1872, the congregation realized that their building was too small and they resolved to enlarge it. At this point, we come across an interesting story in the church's records. It seems the congregation hired a local contractor to do the construction. This contractor was paid in money and also in whiskey. It appears that it was well known that the contractor worked more efficiently when he was paid in this manner. In late 1874, the congregation again realized that they needed more space, so they resolved to construct a separate building. Construction on this building began in 1875 and was completed in 1876. That building still stands today and is the oldest frame church in Lee County still being used as a house of worship. Since the building was completed only a few years after the completion of St. Paul Serban, you will see some similar motifs inside both buildings. For instance, columns in the rear of the church contain feather painting that looks much like marble, just as the columns in Serban do. The color blue is used inside, and the original pulpit was high up, although not quite as high as the one in Serban. Since then, the original altar and pulpit have been removed. The new pulpit is located at floor level, and the altar that you see today was acquired from a nearby church. You can still see where the pulpit originally was. There's a gap in the German wording on the wall, which is translated, "Glory to God in the highest." Pastor Proft's stay in Fedor was not a particularly happy one. There was some amount of discontent in the congregation, and soon after his arrival, his wife died while giving birth to his daughter, who was also stillborn. He buried them nearby in San Antonio Prairie, where in 1873 he built himself a home. He also struggled with poor health during his tenure at the church and in 1875 tendered his resignation. Although Trinity Fedor had been founded by Winds, there was a mix of Windish and German speakers in the congregation, and it seems that the official language of the congregation had always been German, with Windish being used several times a year on special occasions. After Proft's resignation, one faction in the church wanted to call a Windish-speaking pastor. The other wanted to call a German-speaking pastor. It soon became clear that the two factions could not come to an agreement, so the Windish-speaking faction left and set up a new congregation, Ebenezer Lutheran Church, in San Antonio Prairie, and called Proft as their pastor. That congregation later relocated to Mannheim. You may remember that I mentioned earlier in the video that the name of the community was originally West Yehovah. So how did it get the name it has today? Well, in the late 1800s, some of the residents began to move further north to Thorndale in modern-day Milam County. The general store in the community was sold to a German-Jewish immigrant by the name of Fedor Soter. Soter had also operated a general store in Serban, where the post office happened to be located. He wanted to do the same with his new store, so he applied to set up a post office. When the application was approved, the new post office became known as Fedor. By 1900, many of Fedor's residents had relocated to Thorndale, and the post office was discontinued in 1905. Although not much remains of Fedor, Trinity Lutheran Church of Fedor is still an active congregation, part of a dual parish arrangement with St. James Lutheran Church in nearby Lexington.